Last time on the message video, we talked about pressing toward the mark out of Philippians. And we're kind of continuing in that thought a little bit. What is that mark of the high calling of God? And I shared with you that sometimes people put that as ministry, and that's actually incorrect. Pressing toward the mark is being Christ-like, having the mind of Christ and thinking the way that Christ looks at things. And so we're kind of continuing in that thought process. I want to thank David Wilkerson and the Blackabees as some thoughts came from their thinking. And so we want to put that together. In Colossians chapter 1, verses 9 to 14, Paul is praying a prayer over the Colossians, and he prays this: "For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that ye might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power, unto all patience and long-suffering and joyfulness, giving thanks unto the Father, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins." So God, it's Paul's desire that the church at Colossae could have this closeness with God, this life-changing experience that would literally draw them into the kingdom of the Son. It's important for us to look at it, and someone mentioned this to me, and it's kind of leading into that thought that we are going, and I'm not going to be able to cover this all in one message. We've been trying to make the messages a little bit shorter so they are easier for you to watch, and so be patient as we deal with this issue. But it was brought out of Matthew chapter 5, as Jesus says during the Sermon of the Mount, "Be ye perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect." In the Old Testament, the terminology is the same, only it is translated, "Be ye holy, for your Father in heaven is holy." And so what does that mean? What are we striving for in holiness? Again, I want to tell you, and this has so corrupted this message that we have lost focus in the message. And this is the attitude of self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is not holiness. Self-righteousness is Pharisaical, and it is not anything to do with holiness. So people that say, "I am righteous, I am holy," that's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about becoming Christ-like, changing our attitudes to become a reflection of him. And this is a work that's important, that we not lose sight of what it is that we are doing. In Luke chapter 14, verses 28 to 30, it talks about the man that is unable to finish the work that he sets out to do. So who is it that sets out to do a work and doesn't have the plans together to do that work? That's a foolish person that does that. And they will be looked upon as a foolish person. Good intentions will not be enough to see you through the hard times. Many will not have what it takes to finish the race because their priority, their motivation is on the wrong things. And truly, it is a terrible thing to start out with fully intending to lay hold of Christ and grow into a mature disciple, and then slowly just drift away from what you plan to do and become cold and indifferent to Him. Let me say to you, don't think that you are too good for that to happen to you. I have seen lots of wonderful people go into the ministry and be doing a great ministry work, and in the middle of doing that great ministry work, to lose sight and begin to drift away, maybe not from their ministry, but to drift away from God. There's no such thing as standing still. You're either changing to Christ's image every day, or you're changing back to your old carnal ways. Think about that where you are in your life. Because this is in the attitude of being holy as God is holy. That are you moving towards Him, or are you moving away from Him? And so often it is in our attitudes that falls into that kind of a way. For those who have determined to lay hold on Christ at all costs, who are taking up their cross, denying themselves, and going on with Him, Paul said, "But we all with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord." 2 Corinthians 3:18. We're going to get back to that in just a second. But looking again, when you are truly looking to deny yourself and to go all the way with Christ and to take up your cross and follow Him daily, then you experience this. You behold as in a mirror of glory the Lord, and in that you are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory. What's that image? The image that you are seeing. You are seeing Christ in the mirror. You are seeing who He is. And that transforms us by the Spirit of the Lord, not by ourselves, by the Spirit of the Lord. It's a great joy to find people and run into them. And again, I've run into those who have fallen back away from it, but I've also been blessed to run into those that are finishing the race, growing in wisdom and knowledge of Christ, and becoming more distant from the world, becoming heavenly minded. I said that to someone the other day, and I don't say that to exalt myself in any way. I don't want you to look at it that way. I'm not exalting myself in any way, but I'm finding myself growing more and more unconcerned with the world. That doesn't mean that I don't want to reach the world. That doesn't mean that people in the world are not important to me. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the concern is with becoming more and more like Christ, be prepared to be His bride, getting hungrier for more than Christ. And then we experience what Paul said, to live as Christ, to die as gain. We want to be called into His presence, to sit by His side forever. No longer does heaven become what we are seeking, but it is Christ that is in glory that we are seeking. So heaven is just the icing on the cake. Are you following what I'm saying? As our heart changes and as our desire begins to become to have the mind of Christ and to become Christ-like, heaven is just icing on the cake. The streets of gold, the gates of pearl, the wonderful mansions, the wonderful sights are all awesome and fantastic. But when you are becoming holy, your desire is to be with Jesus. What is your desire today? You see in Stephen, as he goes through this tremendous, terrible circumstance, and sometimes we think terrible circumstances means that we're outside of the will of God. Stephen was exactly where he was supposed to be, and he faced the wrath not of people that were outside, but of the religious community. Don't expect that when you begin to desire to be more Christ-like, that's going to make you popular in the church of today. Because the church of today does not like Christ's righteousness. It does not like the mind of Christ. Because the religious community of today is not looking at what is righteous to God. It is looking at what makes it popular with the world. I know that will make me very, very unpopular. Stephen faced tremendously impossible circumstances where death was right in front of him. And in the middle of that, he looks up to heaven. He beholds his Lord in glory. And suddenly, the rejection of the earth means nothing. He's suddenly above it all. I see Jesus standing at the right hand of power. And then he comes into this reality of 2 Corinthians 3:18 that we just read to you about the mirror and changing and all of that. We look at it. We become what we are beholding. We become what we are beholding. So in that attitude of things, maybe the proper translation, Dave Wilkerson says this, we all with open face mirroring the glory are changed. Stephen caught the rays of his glorified Lord and reflected them to a Christ-rejecting society. As Christians, we become like a mirror, reflecting the glory on which we gaze continuously. So if our eyes are fixed on Jesus, then the glory of Jesus begins to shine out of us. We become, and may we become, such a mirror to the world that we are looking on Christ, becoming more like him and reflecting his glory. That's what the world needs today. Now, I think that we need to change our attitude towards these things. And something in a conversation with my son recently, I kind of got this. I told him after I said it, I said, wow, that was profound. I could preach on that. It's not often that I feel like that I come up with a profound thing. But we look at things in positive and negative. And that's often what we base our relationship and what is going on in our relationship, even with God. We look at things in the positive or the negative, but actually, there is no positive or negative with God. You may, now listen to me, folks, those of you, and I know some of you are watching, that are going through real struggles right now. I've been talking about you. I've been praying for you on a daily and nightly basis. And I know you're going through struggles right now. And you probably don't feel like those struggles are positive. But in God's eyes, there is no positive or negative. What God looks at is only his purpose. It is only his purpose. That is all God cares about. And so I come to him. Here I'm going to reveal myself. I come to him sometimes in frustration and say, why is this happening? And he says, you wouldn't be smart enough to understand it if I told you. You just follow me. Just follow me. That's God's purpose. Just follow him. It's not that we understand everything. It's not that everything has to fit into what we look upon as being positive. That's where this stupidity of psychobabble has infiltrated the Church of Jesus Christ and has given us this attitude: if you are truly a Christian and truly holy, you will always be positive and upbeat. I say to you, sorry, Dad, I've said this before. Dad told me not to use that term. Hogwash. That's not reality. You may be the most holy Christian in the entire world, but if you live in reality, there is struggle, there is tribulation, there is battles that you face. But what you have to realize in your walk with him, as you are getting closer to him, especially as you are getting closer to him and you grow into maturity, excuse me, you get away from this attitude of being self-centered and everything having to be the way that you want it to be. Oh boy, am I ever getting into tough territory there. It's God's purpose that matters, not what you see as positive or negative, because God can accomplish his purpose using both. God can use sickness. God can use struggles. God can use tribulations, because what he's developing in you is an attitude of victory that goes beyond all of those things. When you have the mind of Christ, you don't look at things and say to him, oh, what a terrible battle I am going through. You say to him, God, whatever it is that you put me into, let your name be glorified and let your gospel be spread to everybody that I come into contact with. You might say, Mike, can we actually reach that point? Yes, we can. George Matheson was a Scottish Presbyterian clergyman, very well trained at Glasgow University. He was a brilliant scholar and a gifted preacher, and his heart hungered to be entirely the Lord's. He wearied of the resistance he found in his own heart to the whole will of God. Could you say amen to that? That you desire to be like God with everything and to follow entirely his whole will? If you couldn't say that, then this message is not for you. But if you would say that in your own life, and yet you weary of the resistance that is found in your own heart for the whole will of God. So he wrote this: make me a captive, Lord, and then I shall be free. Force me to render up my sword, and I shall a conqueror be. I sink in life's alarms when by myself I stand. Imprison me within thine arms, and strong shall be my hand. Dennis Kinlaw wrote, when the Holy Three-in-One comes into our midst and begins to make us like himself, we should be filled with ecstasy, because his holiness offers us the only chance for our crooked world to be made right. It's the only hope that we have. That's it. The holiness of God filling us, making us Christ-like, and changing our mind into the mind of Christ. So, Lord, if I stand by myself, I fall into the alarms of life. So, imprison me within your arms, and strong shall be my hand. May that be the prayer of everyone watching. Come back with us again as we'll continue in this message.